Hey! Welcome to Creative Block. We're your hosts, Gene.
And V, we interview people in creative industries about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We ask people on Twitter if they have specific topics they want us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Malik Gayle. Hi,
This is
Malik.
so weird to see in person after working on this show for how long?
I don't know. So intros.
Yes.
So for those who don't know, Malik is our producer.
Hello.
Has been doing a killer job running the show behind the scenes so that V and I can focus just on interviews and reaching out to people and stuff. And it's been a huge help. It's been really great. I think you've been with us for at least 6 months, but it's
Yeah,
been
so
more than that.
I was going to say that. Yeah, 6 months.
Yeah.
Doing a
And
great job with the Twitter. So
yes, running the
snarky.
Twitter.
The
Got all
Twitter
the snark.
the Twitter is I,
Yes.
I love having the snark. It's always funny because I get nervous sometimes because I'm representing not just me, I'm representing both of you. I'm just like, hey, are both of you cool with this? I'm gonna say this. And I'm not out here dropping spicy hot takes on the feed, but I at least want to have both of you know in case someone's like, what's this? It's like, oh no, we're good. That's just the producer.
Yeah, I don't care. I rarely care, and I think that the way I would run it is so much more hostile than you run it. So it's a safe bet that yours will be fine. Yeah. You run the Twitter, you run the Patreon, you
Yep.
run you keep an eye on YouTube, and
Yep.
so if you're interacting with us, you're probably interacting with Malik because
Ta-da.
we are busy folks and can only really focus on the actual interviews. Which hopefully you all enjoy very much. But so the reason why we're interviewing Malik today is because we're going to be starting a new show as part of our creative block roster, I guess. And the new show is called Music Box. And it's going to be hosted by Malik. And it is going to center specifically on music guests, something that Malik has a lot of experience with. And speak to that a little bit.
Sure. So I have been a massive music fan for years and years and years. Back in college, I hosted my own music news talk show called Lost Transmissions, it started off as a small little college show, and expanded out way above the scope, which was a 2 hour show. There's a point where I was interviewing people weekly while being a college student, which was
Wow.
a act of hubris, but it all culminated. I think the biggest interview I got that I still pinch myself to this day about is Raid Tour of My Chemical Romance.
Oh, wow, shit, yeah.
That's the biggest one I have. Um, Once I did that, once I finished college, couldn't do a college radio show, and it just kind of felt like there was something missing in terms of doing talking to musicians because it's so much a big part of my life. So I started this podcast called Against the Algorithm, which ran for about 2 years, and funnily enough, that's the way that me and Gene know each other because I think episode number 10
I was
or
gonna say, it
11.
was early.
It was an early episode, 10 or 11. I had Q Bomb on the show, and it's been just such a wild ride to be able to talk to all these people who I'm still in contact. Some of the first few episodes we have on Music Box are people who have been on the old show, and for people who don't know, Against the Algorithm's about mainly indie artists, so people who are not signed and who are just kind of doing it all themselves and very DIY. And I wanted to focus on that just mainly to give support, but also because I figured no one would want to talk to a fresh college grad or have their label artist talk to some random guy. So I was like, okay, indie artists would want to talk to me. Um, but yeah, I ended that late last year, and the wild thing is, the same day I ended the show, I get a message from Gene and V being like, "Hey, do you want to talk about something?" And I'm like, "What?"
Well, it was like I had already considered it. Like
Hmm.
I knew that you liked doing Against the Algorithm, and I personally didn't love that you seemed like you weren't able to keep doing it anymore. And
Yeah.
and so I was thinking of ways to um kind of help creative block, but also help you. And that seemed like an obvious choice. It was just like, hey, let's use the platform that we've already kind of built up here. And hopefully help you reach a wider audience as well, and just kind of help each other out. And yeah, and I'm glad that you're into the idea, because I think that you are really good at connecting with artists. And like I had a great time being on your show. I've done it twice.
Yeah.
The second time was Q-Bomb interviewing you, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So it was 6 people talking over each other.
I don't know how I convinced all of you to do that. I'm
Oh
still
no, it was
surprised.
easy. No, everyone loves you. And once, as soon as it was like Malik wants to interview us, we were like, yep, all right. There was no debate. But yeah, and so I think it's gonna be really cool. For those who care, I'll be dipping in and out of Music Box interviews, but it's Malik's show. It's just, if there's a guest that I feel like I want to talk to or ask something or just get to know, then I'll pop in. But yeah, Malik's an amazing host. And now that we've gotten that all out of the way, Malik, tell us who you are and what you do.
So hi, my name's Malik. I'm a Scorpio. Oh no, I'm kidding.
Wow.
We've done the whole spiel about producer for Creative Block, but yeah, I mean, do you want me to kind of touch on what I do for Music Box in particular? Like,
I think, I would, because you have an interesting history as well. Like same thing we always ask, like education and kind of like what got you interested in music and in sort of the creative fields in general. Let's hear it.
sounds good. So I mean, the funny thing is, I wanted to be a visual artist.
Oh, okay.
In like high school, I wanted to be like completely serious, a cartoonist. I wanted to be,
Yeah.
I wanted to be in animation,
I
and
didn't know that.
it was just
really? That's
yeah.
so cool.
I got accepted to Pratt actually,
Oh, wow.
and almost went in that direction, but there was a moment where I didn't feel super confident about my art, and there was just a moment I was like, I don't feel like it's at the level where I feel confident about it, so it took a step back. But I've always been a huge fan of just media, so music, visual arts, comics. They've just been like super ingrained into my life and how I just like interact with things, mainly music. If you've checked out my Twitter or when you listen to the episodes, you'll know that I have massively emo. There was a aggressive love of Fall Out Boy for many years. It's dying down, but people won't let me live it down still. Yeah, there was a run. There was a run where like for 6 years, Fall Out Boy was my top artist, and it became a running joke. And I was like, I listened to actually cool things. I swear.
They're who cares? They're fine.
I know, but like, listen.
Don't let the haters
Like,
haters keep you down.
The like goat meme, like I am cringe, but I am free. That's what I try to live by now. It's like,
Well, it wasn't even cringe at that point. At that point, it was mainly like, okay, I know they're not my top artist this year. What the fuck? It was more like, okay, something's wrong with Spotify. I am not the problem here.
I don't know. It's just they're keeping track of what you're listening to the most. So.
Well, the weird thing is I listen to music mostly on YouTube, but yeah. So yeah, being a teenager just I was listening to music a ton and just listening to radio, and for some weird reason I just loved like those behind the scenes featurettes or any sort of video where it was creatives just sitting down and talking about their process and going behind the scenes and just getting really deep into it, which like led me into this level of like having really long style interviews. So like I said, I went to college and I went to school for journalism. And when I started doing interviews for my radio show, I got told at first, oh yeah, cut them down, make them like 30 seconds, like no, or 30 minutes or whatever, or like real short. I'm like, no, like if I'm gonna have someone sit down and talk here, we're talking for an hour, and you're gonna hear most of it. And I don't know, it was just something that was really important to me. Say like to get real deep and get really interesting conversations and expand and not just ask really surface level questions, because I feel like anyone could do that. And that's what started me mainly on the journey of like interviewing people. And the way I got my first interview ever was just literally shooting out a DM to a band. I was like, hey, how can I get an interview with Jukebox the Ghost? And the band responded and they were like, well, you could reach out like you are right now. And I was like, yeah, sure. What's your email? And they sent it back, and like a day or two later, that was like the first interview I've ever done.
Wow.
And trust me, there's been a lot of highlights, and there's one interview that I will never live down and will never see the light of day, and it's with a big band too.
Oh no.
I'll say it, but
Well, can you?
okay, go.
Really? You got okay go.
So I got okay go, but the problem was it was really early on, and so everyone's like, oh my gosh, Malik got okay go, but I was also 19, so they didn't really trust me to like really do it solo, so they had someone else kind of like jump in, and the interview started going more in an angle of just like trying to get like a bite, or trying to get like something to like oh, we need to get something juicy out of this interview, versus like, oh, let's talk.
Oh,
And
interesting. That's really funny that you mentioned that, because I feel like it's funny because interviewing people, like I've never really interviewed people before, like before doing creative blog, and I've had a couple people be like, "Oh, are you gonna like try to get something juicy out of it?" And I was just like, "What? No."
No,
Why
when you
would I
f-
be? Why
Yeah,
would I try doing that? But now I get it. I guess would you say it's something in journalism that like is it something at school that they were like trying to implement in the curriculum? Is this something that is part of it? I don't
not
know.
not really. Like for the most part, like with the career, it was mostly so the weird thing was when I went to school for journalism, they were kind of teaching you more or less like, to do a little bit of everything, and like they were training you for a career and doing like, for lack of a better term, like more local news, and like being like on like the grindstone and getting stories out. And when you're thinking about like, okay, I have a deadline, I have a story due, I need to knock it out, like your biggest priorities are like, it's true, it's well done, and it's turned in on time. You have
okay,
no time to really think about, ooh, what's spicy about it. You're like, okay, what will draw people in,
right.
and why will
Mhm.
someone care about it? But you're not trying to be like, I need a tidbit, because like you don't have time. You have like 5 hours, and you're a multimedia journalist, so you're like filming and editing and interviewing all by yourself.
You know what's really interesting about what you're saying is that I don't know if you guys are familiar with the channel All Gas No Break. Now it's called Channel 5.
Yeah.
And the guy went to he has an interview and he says he talks about that he's like um uh they really were pushing him to do local news, and then he just wanted to go like full indie and do his like yeah, I mean it could be a controversial channel. I don't know. I think it's really funny. I think he's really good at
It
editing.
it is really good. I've checked out that channel before, and it's really awesome. And no, you're right. Like like I said, I was like in the college radio station scene. So my job, my original plan post college was to be like, oh hey, I'm gonna work for a record label, or oh, I'm gonna work for Pitchfork and be a fucking hipster in Brooklyn. Um, you know,
Love it.
we're like 50% of the way there,
Nice.
but like that was
Follow
like
your dreams.
no, listen, you guys haven't
Move
seen
to
a picture.
Brooklyn. Follow your dreams.
No, like you don't understand how deep this went. Do you either like I had a pork pie hat that I wore every
Oh,
single
Malik.
day. If you saw a picture of me in college, like it was like
Oh,
I
Malik.
was that 2014 hipster.
Oh
I
no.
love that for you though. That's so
Like I
funny.
bury it, and but all my friends who knew me at that time know like
That was you.
that was me.
Hey, no shame, man. I had a
Yeah.
moment. Okay, I had a moment where that was like part of high school going into
Yeah.
college where like I was just frantically trying to figure out what is cool, and which I think a lot of people go through. And my version of that for a moment was I was like, you know, it'd be really cool if I wore like leather newsboy caps. And I realized pretty quickly that's not a good look for me. I don't really know if it's a good look for anyone, but if you can pull it off out there, I mean, you know, go for it. But that was not a good one. And I wore a lot of beanies in high school, which was not the flyest.
I don't know. I feel like beanies will never, for me, beanies will never die. It's
Beanies
a,
are classic.
Not the way I
yeah.
wore them. I feel like it's like Okay, there's also a problem with like just general head shape, and I don't think I can pull off hats. And so I
But
got
all
this.
you guys need to know is that Gene has a really bad head.
I have a bad head. It's like I have like a 5 head, and it's just like so much rounder on top than it is on the bottom. And so I just look like I'm a tiny little man anytime I wear a hat. I look like I'm wearing my dad's hat. Anyway, enough about my stupid head. But I no shame. I get it. Everyone has to go through an awkward wearing a weird hat phase, I think.
But were you really, did you have a goal like that in mind? Like a very, like, defined goal when you were in college? Like you said, the Pitchfork thing. Like, honestly, I used to read Pitchfork all the time. I was like, but then I got mad at them because they like gave a bad rating to tobacco. I forgot
Oh,
which was. And I was just like, I mean, it wasn't like a bad rating, but they were just kind of like
very snarky about it. Yeah.
very snarky. And I was just like, I cannot trust you guys anymore because
Yeah.
like the rabid fangirl, I'm like, no, tobacco BMSR, always 100%.
Well, I'll just say that Pitchfork has some takes. I think they reviewed the Peppa Pig album. So I forgot what they get rated the Peppa Pig album. I might, when I'm not talking, I might review it or check it out. Not review it.
Maybe it's sick. Maybe it's sick. Maybe it's the shit.
You know, my head's kind of fried. I talked a little bit about before the episode. Quick tangent. We did, my team at my job did a quick team building exercise for like a PowerPoint party. It's like, oh, we all get to make little PowerPoints on like random topics that we want to talk about. And it was my fault. I picked like us doing that. But my dumbass decided to be a cool idea to do a presentation on why Mambo Number 5 is the best song ever written.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a good song.
Did you know there was a Bob the Builder cover of it?
No.
It charted number 2 in Australia, and it's certified platinum in Australia.
As part of like the show, like
like the voice actor for Bob just did a cover, and they turned all the lyrics into like
so weird
building theme things.
A little bit of hammering in my life.
Gene, you're not far off.
A little bit of building.
I love that.
Was it a little bit of something in sand makes like you?
That sucks. That's not great. Yeah, Jesus.
But
I wanted to talk about like we were talking about interviewing people and like getting juicy takes and all this stuff, and I think that like we're doing these once a week, and a lot of journalism is like you have to stay on a schedule and you have to stay consistent, and I don't think, even if it's your full-time job, which this isn't for us, but even if it's your full-time job, it's probably not healthy to go into every interview wanting it to be the most breakthrough thing possible. And like, and if you force it, you risk alienating the guest that you have on. And
it's like, if you want to build a fan, like not a fan base, but like if you want to build trust with potential upcoming guests, it's so important to be like, hey, we're taking care of you. I don't know.
No, I agree. We have I don't know, a policy, but we have like we generally try to keep our guests comfortable, and like when we go into our interviews, we always tell them that let us know if there's anything you want to edit out, and we do, and like we've done that a lot. There's been a lot of situations where a guest got a little too comfortable and started telling us things that like they trust us with as industry peers, but it was like, oh wait, no, maybe we shouldn't. maybe we
shouldn't talk about this to like everybody.
I mean, it's also like it's just like it's casual. Most of the time we turn off the video, so people, it's kind of like you're in therapy or whatever. You're like,
a little bit, So
you're just like talking like, oh, this person gets me.
I think that happens, but I think that's and that's something that like, but it's a delicate balance, right? Because like we want, when something's good's gonna come out, it's gonna come out. Like if somebody's comfortable and it's the kind of person or guest that has something that they don't mind speaking to, or some juicy gossip, they'll do it and they'll be comfortable with it, and then you get some cool stories out of it. But forcing it, you
You never
alienate
can, yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
we've also like I see it as a very journalistic thing, and like we recently came across some drama that we were like,
Yeah.
oh yikes. But ultimately it's like, well, we can't pick sides here, and it's just like we're delivering facts and delivering the information that we're given,
Yeah.
and beyond that, it's like there's nothing more that we can do.
Exactly.
It's
And like the podcast is a platform for people, and like in some situations people might say something that people might disagree with or don't, or like they might have opinions on, but that's not like you saying it, that's the guest saying it. And
yeah,
we are setting the stage and we're bringing the audience, and that's very different from like saying it itself. And granted, there's like a responsibility with like there's a responsibility with journalism, but like I think there's a difference. There's some aspect of like, hey, we are talking to this person to get their experience and get their story, and they're the one talking and they're the focus. And then there's journalism where I feel like people will get someone to talk and then say, okay, and now this is how it feeds into my opinion. And creative block is definitely not like like it's more the former than the latter. It's more like we're talking and we want to know your story and we want to know about you, and that's why people come back. People come back to hear about this, and we're getting just increasingly more and more people who are. I mean, I pinch myself every day sometimes
you
with some
get
of the
some good
people
guests.
we've got, and um no, I agree.
I'm stoked for it too. It's it's been crazy. We're slowly just kind of trying to work our way up to bigger name guests, but you can't do that unless you've built up you know they have to see names that they recognize, and names that they are going to be like, oh, they got so and so, like, great.
But
Yeah,
also, it's like, I don't know. I'm also really excited about the platform existing to showcase like parts of the industry that are less talked
Yeah,
about as
definitely.
well. That's something that's always kind of been on my mind. That's why recently we've got Ken Arto, who's like animating from Japan. I thought that's
Mm-hmm.
such an interesting perspective. Having more indie animators from the YouTube scene, which is such an interesting way of doing animation, and that isn't covered a ton yet, not in depth. Like that kind of stuff, which I think is so cool. Yeah, webcomics, and like you said, Malik, like having indie artists that don't usually have a platform. Because I think that moment in a career when you're taking that leap of faith and you're like, I'm just gonna make music in my bedroom, it's like pretty scary
yeah,
Yeah.
because you're not making anybody.
yeah. And people don't forget that. I mean, that's the biggest thing. And like I know we talked way about it a little bit earlier about like not alienating people, but like I've gotten to develop a ton of like amazing friendships just purely off of like doing the show. I mean, like obviously there's Gene,
Right.
Mhm.
but then I've had people like Jiraiya, who's been on the
Mm-hmm.
podcast. I hung out with him. There's an artist named Mystery Skulls who
Oh yeah.
I interviewed way back when I was in college, and we broke the cycle now, but there was a period in time where every single time he had a new album, he was on whatever I was doing. So there were 2 interviews on college radio. There's one interview on Against the Algorithm. He he has an album out now, so
It's time.
I probably could and be like, "Yo, Lewis, it's time to do." It's interview number 4, but like, it's also so interesting because with those interviews, and granted, like, very very few people will have listened, if any, have heard like all 3 interviews that I've done with Lewis. But it's so interesting to see how that dynamic changes when you are friends with that person and they trust you to be like, okay, like I know when I'm having a conversation with Malik, like the questions I'll ask and like
Right.
what we're going to be getting into, and that leans into new like realms of conversation because we're like I've gotten past the, oh, hey, what are your influences, what are your inspirations,
Yeah.
and you get like into like some really interesting topics. So I mean, I'm excited for the second Q Bomb interview because that's going to be a new interesting
It's gonna be
one and
fire.
angle to go into. But yeah,
We have yeah. That's something that I mean, a little backstory on our show as well. Like, I don't know if we've ever really gone into it. We might have, but a while back, like 2016, I wanted to do a video interview show that immediately I realized was a terrible idea. I was in over my head. But I was going to be interviewing the same thing we're doing now, where I interviewed like animation people, and that was around the time I first met V too, I think.
Oh yeah,
And
I remember you were pitching it at Nickelodeon, and I was just like, how is this guy gonna get this together?
here's the answer: I didn't. And
Because
so
you're like, I'm gonna have a couch in the little room with like
Yeah.
projectors and the cameraman. And I was like,
well,
oh my god.
I legitimately was trying to figure it out, and
Yeah.
and it's just logistically it was just difficult. But I was also busy. I ended up doing other things.
Yeah.
But
Pre-pandemic, way before the
yeah, this is
pandemic.
way before. I got into development around that time, so I was like, well, this is my life. And then but speaking of pandemic, it was like October of 2020, and V had like mentioned offhand that she wanted to do something like this, and then I was like, well, let's partner up, and we had a few conversations about it, and combined the two ideas because the video aspect of it was difficult, but V had the idea to do the drawing, and so like, which I've fallen off from, but like it's a good idea, and I think the fusion of the two made sense, and then we got Clem to edit the show, which
We
is
would not have the show started at all if it
Full
wasn't
stop.
for her, because literally we recorded 2 episodes and I was supposed to edit them together and I never did it. And then I was just like, well, and then I like asked Clem if she was interested in like helping us out. And now we have a show.
it's asking for help is like has
Yeah.
become my mantra, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that I've tried to do in my life, and I try to do them by myself a lot of the time. And granted, like, I think I just have access to more resources, and also I have more clout, so people believe me when I want to make something that I'm actually gonna like finish it, which I didn't have when I was younger. I was just some kid. But man, yeah, like just getting help from people around you, and sometimes throwing them some money, it goes a long way, because people want to help, and people like being a part of stuff if it feels like genuine, and if it's a
Yeah.
fun project. So
I think that's true too. It's something that I didn't realize, that sometimes just kind of coming up with the overall structure of a project,
Yeah.
it's actually harder than it sounds. But once you have that structure figured out, then it's so much easier for people to jump on it, because then it's like
right.
easier to define your role, I guess.
Yeah. And I wouldn't want to say like I feel like I'm now starting to get to a point where I feel like definitely more ownership over the producer role. I feel like at first I was very much kind of like, okay, I'm here. Sorry, Clem. I feel like at first I was very much kind of like, okay, I'm here for Gene and V's project. I'm here to do this stuff. Like, I'm gonna make sure every single thing's perfect, and we're here. And great, and I'm still making sure everything's perfect as much as possible. But I'm not trying to be like, listen,
I don't know. You might be slipping up. Now I'm starting to wonder.
but like once I felt comfortable to like, after a while, I started to feel more comfortable. You're like, okay, I know what the show is.
Yeah.
I know what we need to do to make sure things are running. Like, I don't need to ping Gene or V about these things.
Yeah.
Like, I've got this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you do. And I think that I trusted you, pretty much right off the bat, because I knew that you were good. Obviously, there's a period of like, how is this going to go? But like, you picked it up really quickly. And yeah, and I think it's been great. And it's just seeing the way you handle the Twitter and everything.
Yeah.
And also like the way that it's been helping me too, like, because I've been managing at my job, and I think like getting you onto Creative Block was like a soft lesson in onboarding for me too. Like it was like, and now I've done it in my job at least twice, maybe more. But yeah, and so it's like, you bring people on and you give them the space to explore and find their footing and make it their own.
Yeah.
And like, and it's like it echoing what V said. It's like, yeah, it's like if you've already kind of put in the work to make a structure, anybody that is smart will pick up on it, and they'll figure it out, and they'll fit right in.
Yeah, I mean, V, like, what about V? I mean, of course I knew Gene and had experience, and so Gene kind of knew. But when it came to me jumping in, like you had no idea who I was, so it's just like, oh yeah, here's this person. So I mean, like, how is it from your perspective? Because I know it's probably very different.
I mean, for me, I always start out kind of believing the best out of people. I'm always just like, I have this kind of like thing that it's like, I mean, obviously, I have like a set amount of chances that I give people. It's like, I don't know. I do believe I tend to be more lenient than the average person. Like I tend to be like, you have 10 chances when like the average person is like only two and then it's a strike. But I mean, like I was like, from the way you talk, I was like, oh, this guy sounds great. He's really sweet and funny and so helpful. And we met, like that's also a reason why I asked if we could FaceTime. I think we had a call, the three of us, very early on. I just wanted to say hi and be like, and also there's a thing for me. It's like if someone's gonna jump on your project, even if you're paying them, it's like it's not something to take for granted. I feel like it's because I believe time is the most valuable resource you have in your life. And if someone is willing to give their time to help you out, like that is something to really value and appreciate. And I was just so happy, like we didn't really know the show. Like, of course, we had episodes out, and you could like listen and be like, oh, maybe this was like.
No, I was a fan.
Oh, you were?
I was a fan of the show. I checked out the show.
Oh, I didn't know you liked the show before. Okay, I thought literally Gene was just like, oh. Malik has experience with podcasts. He could help us out.
I think I saw you interacting too, and I think that was part of the decision for me, because I was like, well, because like I want to bring on people into anything that I do. I want to bring on people who would get excited about it, and it's just that's good for everybody. It's like hiring out of left field or getting somebody to collaborate out of left field. It's there's like a weird mismatch of energy that often happens. I've noticed where it's like, unless you're in a position where you can pay people well and you're working for a network or something, when it's projects like this, it has to be somebody who gives a shit, because it's like, why?
And that's true. I did have the added benefit of like, okay, like I am an animation nerd, so like a lot of these things are people are, oh yeah, we're gonna talk to this person, or we're talking to this person. I get like the gravitas in some situations when we're like, oh hey, we're gonna reach out for this person, or yo, we're trying to get Gendy.
Yes, or like we are trying to get Gendy.
Yeah, and
Gendy, if you hear us right now,
Gendy, if you're Gendy, I know you're listening.
Yeah, because Gendy's definitely listening to the episode with the producer of the pod. Yeah, this is the episode that makes Gendy go, they're an animation podcast, but let me listen to the episode with the producer. This is where the real shit happens.
Maybe it is. Maybe it's like, how people like, sorry, Clem. You know how it's like people, like they keep an eye on how people treat waiters,
Yeah.
It's like if somebody's mean to a waiter, it's like, oh, they're probably going to be a dick in other ways.
Well, you're not going to be mean to me.
No, but if a guest is like, let's see how they are when they're not. Let's see how they are with their friend, with their producer.
Yeah,
and like maybe that's the deciding factor.
So Gendy, get on this. Listen, our email is no.
Well, you didn't give the email. You should probably.
Well, listen. I mean, we've gotten some weird. We've been starting to get sponsorship emails. There's been some that I've flat out denied and have not told you, because a lot of them are supplements.
Oh, like vitamin D or like weirder supplements?
Weirder supplements.
No!
Like weenie supplements?
Yeah, well, I think there was like one that's like, we'll make you rip or something like that. I'm just like, I know Gene likes Game Buff, but I don't think that's like...
Send me those links so I know not to click on them.
Gotcha. So like, there's been times, and so nothing too crazy, but like but that's the other thing, like knowing the tone and the voice, like we're not gonna wanna like be like, hey, like check out the weenie pills here at Creative Block. Like we're not. Maybe. This is not the podcast you go to get like an endorsement of that. So that's like another thing of like knowing like the tone of the show and being like, I don't even need to bring this up. I'm just gonna handle it. Like there's sometimes there was a comment on an episode. I don't want to get too much into it that I just saw and was like, Absolutely not, and deleted that shit. I have a screenshot of it, but I was like, we don't need to stress about this too much. It's gone, dealt with, and but it kind of like feeds into more being like, oh, like here we go. Like I am, like this is my not like my show as much.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's like, I mean, I think it's really great too because you have this like, you have this understanding of kind of like the vibe we're trying to get,
yeah,
like you're kind of like in that same like wholesome, kind of quirky kind of vibe that we're trying to do with the show. So,
Yeah.
that's so great. You get it.
You get it. What's been the wackiest experience for you so far?
on Creative Block.
Yes, on Creative Block.
Okay, when we had Jason DeMarco, I held my tongue
Yeah.
so fucking much. I was like, yo, and not in a bad way. I know I held my tongue makes seem bad. I was like, oh my god,
You had to play it cool.
play it cool. Play it cool is an understatement. I was gonna be like you. I was like, I don't know. I can't ask to be in the episode. I don't want. I'm like, chill. Like there have been a few episodes where I've been like, okay, wow. So Jason DeMarco is one of them. Alex Hirsch is one.
Sure.
Was another one. I was a huge Gravity Falls fan. So I play I don't play it often, but I play my I am the producer, therefore I will throw a Hail Mary drawing prompt that out in the
Yes,
air.
you do what you can. Yeah.
Another one's coming up. I don't want to say for what episode because that's spoilers, and we don't do spoilers here in Creative Block. But I already have a prompt for another guest, and I already have my Hail Mary prompt, and I'm excited for it.
We'll do it. I mean, the ones you're naming, I was just as excited for, and
Yeah.
like it. Yeah. I mean, you could probably get Jason back for a music specific one. We
Yeah.
touched
Oh
on
yeah, that would be cool.
on stuff a little bit, but like I don't have the well of knowledge that you have with music, so I couldn't go into like the Adult Swim Records stuff.
Oh my god!
Um,
Like the record. Oh my gosh! Like I don't know. Like it would be so exciting to talk with him because like again, I feel like Adult Swim and even Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon. There were those like times where they had those like music videos they played early on. Like the first time I heard about the Highs was the Cartoon Network did a song with them like for like summer called like
yeah,
it's just something that grown-ups invented.
Yeah,
and then
I
Tick
forgot
Tick
about
Boom.
That.
Was the first time I ever heard the Hives, and like
Yeah, that's interesting.
and then like song was it? There was like Milk Crisis by the Go Team, and so there were so many music things like that like shaped it. So that's why. So coming back to like animation and like the things that like shaped me, like I'd be watching like I don't know, Ben 10, and then like I'd see that music video and that song and be like, oh my gosh, that's really cool, and go on YouTube and like watch AMVs and all of that stuff, or like find stuff on Tumblr. I mean, there's so many different ways to find cool, interesting music that like I've been open to, and like I have really strong memories, or I can remember like who's the person that like put that person on my radar, and it's so nice to have those experiences.
Do you still use you still use Last FM to find new music?
I don't use Last.fm. I'm trying to think of how I've been listening to a lot lately. This feels like an against the algorithm question.
Well,
it is because I asked like, what are the ways you find new music? So Spotify, I felt bad. So my big idea with against the algorithm was like, I was gonna say stick it to the man. I'm gonna talk to these indie artists. They don't listen to Spotify. They don't use Spotify to find their new music. I had this like deluded like hypothesis, and very, very quickly that hypothesis got checked. Everyone was like, Spotify's. I'm sorry. Yeah, I know it's against the algorithm, but Spotify. Like another fun thing about it is like the name of the show is very like divisive because you could hear there are the guests that were like, oh hey, like cool like alliteration name, and then there were some people who were like, yeah man, fuck the algorithm, and I'm like, oh, you are jaded.
Yeah, there's
That's
always going to be those.
that's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, I feel like Against the Algorithm has a little bit more of a like statement to it than like
Yeah,
Creative Block is very like safe.
but
In terms of like
and Gene can attest to it, but I mean, like, Against the Algorithm is like just pure like there's it's informative and I want to ask questions, but there I am not afraid to go on very very dumb tangents
Oh yeah.
about very very like silly topics, or like the running joke I see about people who I've interviewed is the fact that I like deep diving on people's like Twitter or social media to like make sure that I'm like asking relevant questions or asking things, and like I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just doing my due diligence, but everyone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you expect me to do? Just like sit down and not know anything about you? So like everyone just knows me as like the guy who will comb your Twitter and will ask you questions about
That
tweets.
shit's so fun though, because it's like it's that like Hot Ones deep dive, where it's like
right.
you dig up, or Nardwar, where
Um,
Nardwar will go and like find like, so I heard that you liked this band from the 1920s and you lived on this block in this city, and they're like, what the fuck, dude? I think
Gene,
that's fun.
you don't know how spot on you are with that because I listened to like a ton of Nardwar. There's like
I
a
love
TED
Nardwar.
talk Nardwar did
Oh,
about
really?
like reaching out to people that I listened to before Against the Algorithm and kind of like stuck with me. So
Yeah, no, he's great. I think that there's a reason why he is the legend that he is, and I think it's because, well, he's a weirdo. That's part of it. Love you, Nardwar, but he knows. Um, but like, I think that that approach is great, because how many interviews do artists do where it is what you mentioned earlier, where it's just like, what are your influences, like, so what were you like channeling when you
like, what's
wrote
next
this
for you?
album?
Like, what
Yeah,
do you want to
what's
do now?
next? And it's boring. It's fucking boring. And you've done enough of those, and it's just you don't want to hear it anymore. And that was the thing with Creative Block too, where it's like, initially we were kind of experimenting with it, with the format and trying things out, but I quickly realized that asking people for their influences is like not. I was trying to, yeah,
Yeah. I feel like also the influence question for me like kind of runs dry pretty fast, and usually we're able to hit it while they're kind of like telling us their journey. I feel
Mhm.
like for me, the things that I really connect with the most is if they're ever open about talking about, the setbacks and stuff. I think especially in our age of like social media where it's like just successes after successes, it's very easy for audiences to feel a little sad about their own
Yeah,
Yeah.
accomplishments. So it feels really relatable when a guest is willing to,
like open up and talk about that.
yeah, I think so. Because, it's like we're all people, we all have
Yeah.
shortcomings.
We have
That's
failures and flaws. Yeah.
that's true. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. Part of the reason like ATA ended was there was a lot of like personal things happening,
Mm-hmm.
compounded on top of just kind of like the schedule, like
Mm-hmm.
that just were like hard. I mean, like dealing with a breakup, getting a diagnosis on something, like both of those were very like immediate things that were like, okay, this all sucks. And I was like, okay, I need time to step back and like focus more on like myself and like
Yeah.
where I'm at. Um, but like it was like a great opportunity to be able to do that, but also take a step backwards, and like I really loved producing, like when I first started getting into Creative Block and being able to kind of do all these behind the scenes things, like my roommate, who's also like my best friend since high school, has was like, dude, you've been like like you're absolutely thriving in this, and like you're so locked in, and it's awesome to see. And I didn't see it, like, like I feel like I felt like like I failed in some way because I wasn't being like visually creative at a certain point. And he was like,
Mm.
dude, and like Jason talked about it in his episode, like you don't have to be like doing a visual thing to be
Yeah.
creative. Like you're being creative in how you're trying to talk about the show and like present the
Yeah.
show, and that's very unique, and you can't downplay that.
I think it is a skill in its own. Like producing in general is a skill in its own, and we've had guests where several guests that have talked about that and how essential it is. But even for our show, yeah, it's like, because at the end of the day, like, I don't have the mental energy to be witty on Twitter. Like I just,
yeah, dude, for real. Yeah.
I just don't. And that would burn me out so fast on this show, because I was doing the Twitter in the early episodes, and doing some of the uploading and all that stuff, and it's just like it just fucks me up. Like I just can't do it. But different people have different skills and different
I say
like,
2 words to that. Thank Tumblr. I was like,
elaborate.
The hate. Okay. In my heyday, I was on Tumblr in its heyday, so like I was like around, like I was just so used to saying, okay, I am going to say very dumb things for attention, and I was in the Fall Out Boy Tumblr fandom.
Always comes back to Fall Out Boy. You have to. Okay, this is our goal. This is the personal goal for a music box.
What?
To get Fall Out.
Absolutely not.
I mean, I don't.
No.
Why?
I don't know. Okay,
I have for the moon, and you'll land amongst the stars.
Yeah.
I've met most of Fall Out Boy. I have a picture with Patrick Stump that is very embarrassing, but I will show both of you. It was after a concert, and my friend Stacy, my phone died, so my friend Stacy took a picture with me, and for some, like, Patrick put his arm over my shoulder.
Oh, nice.
And I realized that happened, and the click happens, and this is probably
all right.
the
I'm
worst.
going to describe this photo. It's a little blown out, so I can't see it.
Okay, I can't. I should probably just send it, but I'm just jaw dropped. Like I am.
Aww.
Hold on.
That's
I'm
right.
gonna send it in the Discord because we have that, and I should just use what we have.
And Clem will see it and wonder what the hell.
Clem and Rem, I'll just be like, "What's going on?"
Yes.
Oh yeah, like
oh, look at you.
Oh,
You look so happy. There's a twinkle in your eye.
Yeah, I don't
forget. Never. Never forget.
Fall Out Boy. We have a weird experience with that. I think I've talked about it on the show, but maybe not.
You've talked about it on Against the Algorithm. It was like they were doing a Nickelodeon show or something.
They had some weird. There was like a Nick promo thing where it's like a New Year's Eve thing where they played. I'm sure somebody can figure it out.
I know where it is. I watched it.
Okay, well there you go. That's somebody's you. And we were just working. That was just a work day for us. And they holed up, like their green room was on the floor that we were working on the Loud House floor at the time. And so like we couldn't do any we couldn't do any meetings in that room. We could barely even like acknowledge their existence. It was weird. The vibe was weird because it was just like Fall Out Boy's here, and it was just like
Fall Out Boy's like a don't look at me band. What?
I don't want to say that.
Okay.
But
it's maybe just like
everyone's like,
through. Yeah, we were.
Everyone's just on edge.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't there at the time, but I'm guessing people. It's that phase
you weren't.
like,
Okay.
No, because it was before the condos, right?
No, this is after. That was after the condos.
After the condos?
I'm pretty sure you were there.
Well, if it was after the condos, I was there, but I don't remember that. I
might have been out.
I don't know.
But anyway, I think you were still working on Loud House at that point. But and like somebody came up to our floor, or I think I was actually in Ari Castleton's office at the moment, and it was I think at the time I think you were still there, V, so it was your office too. But somebody came in like sweaty. And they were like, we need somebody to draw some shit on the whiteboard so the Fall Out Boy feel welcome. And we were like, well, we're artists. They were like, well, you got any fucking artists here? Like, we're a fucking studio, right? And we were like, Sure. And so me, I do a lot of caricatures, and so I was like, hey, I'll draw them on the whiteboard. And then Ari did like some fancy lettering that was like Fall Out Boy. Welcome, Fall Out Boy. And so I drew all four of them. And then I do remember telling the story now. Okay. But whatever. Pete, I think it was Pete, took a photo of that and tagged it. Didn't tag me, but I wrote my screen name under it, like an
Very
at Gene
smart.
Goldstein.
Oh my God, you're
Yes.
so funny.
I
Nice.
knew. And
Ah.
so he didn't tag me, which is fine, but still you could see it. And I got so many followers that were like Fall Out Boy lover, Fall Out Boy girl, Fall Out Boy fan, Fall Out Boy. And I was like, oh, they're in for a rude awakening.
Okay, I want to stop it right here.
Okay.
That was not how I found you. I just want to make sure
Oh,
that okay.
I was starting to wonder.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
I saw the Planet Panic pilot.
Okay.
So that's how. But I'm hearing that story and how much of like I'm like, oh yeah, Fall Out Boy. I'm like, I need to stop this right here before someone's like, oh, the only reason
Interesting.
Malik got here was because of Fall Out Boy.
No, I didn't think that. But yeah, that was a funny experience. And then they played a show in our Nickelodeon like courtyard that night.
Remember when
And,
Pitbull came and
that was
Pitbull?
weird.
Pitbull did a show, and then I'm so sad now because I did not realize that I didn't know who Pitbull was. I was like, oh, it's just somebody that is named after a dog, and then like recently at the gym, I was just like looking at on Spotify, like
It's huge.
just like get ripped or whatever.
Yeah.
Those, like playlists to help you just kind of get going for your workout, and he's in a bunch of those, and I'm like, God damn it, this is
Mr.
fun.
Worldwide.
I
So-
know. I'm like,
so-
oh, if I had known.
For context, my main job has to do with like SEO. So it's all search engine optimization stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that keeps me up at night is I don't know how Pitbull did it, but he got someone to do it. But if you look up the word Pitbull, you get him over the dog breed. You don't get the dog breed first. You
Wow.
get Pitbull.
Yeah, some people just like that's always the yeah, it's always impressive. I wanted to look up the term coda, like the music term coda. And all I got was the movie, which I like the movie. But it was like, wow, that was fast. Like I guess I can never search for I had to scroll to like the 5th or 6th result to get the meaning of the word coda.
I do say that the creative block. I look up here and there. I don't look all the time, but I look up the word creative block because I know there's some other ones out there.
That's a tough one.
We are kicking their asses though.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, if you Google Creative Block Podcast, we're #1. If you
It's
if you
it's
do
a lot
just
of our
creative,
episodes.
yeah, that's why I'm saying we just gotta keep going. It's also honestly, it's just like the thing where it's like if you really spam a word, you're gonna. I feel like for Pitbull, like he's the kind of like he got a ton of articles. He always like has a lot of like news going, or I mean, maybe not now, but for a while he was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Pitbull
making, like,
owned
yeah.
like summers, like again, college DJ. So I would DJ a lot of formals of like fraternities and sororities. And when I say that, I don't know, like he knew when formal season was coming up because he'd drop a song and I would have to play that song for an entire like semester. Like I have several Pitbull songs saved in my library because they're just. I'm not proud to say that. Like, was a time of my life where it's like, I know my rent was gonna be late about a week ago. I worked my ass off. I've played that song so many times. Timber,
With Kesha?
yeah, it's going. I didn't think it was gonna be big, and then I saw like it got a big reaction, and I'm just like,
that's
wow.
surprising. Malik, we ask our guests,
Yep.
how do they deal with creative block? And what does it feel like to them? And can you speak to that?
So it's pretty unique with me because like even in my day job, I do a lot. I've mentioned it like to both of you personally, but like I'll tiptoe around it a bit because not trying to break NDAs, even though I'm not technically on one. So I work on outlines for people who want to optimize content for Google. So more or less, very brief way of saying, we tell you what to write so you can do it. And like even in those situations, it's really hard to what you need to do, but like sitting down and just like getting the words out of your head
Oh
and
yeah.
getting there, they're really hard. And even with creative block, it's just making sure that we're like keeping regimented, because it's like, okay, we have a release schedule, we have patrons we need support, we need to make sure scheduling's on time. So when I hit creative block, the biggest thing for me is recognizing what's happening. For a while, the biggest issue I've had was I would just kind of go into a spiral and feel real bad about myself because I was really
Mm.
self-conscious. So what would happen was I'd say like, hey, like, why can't I do something? Like, why is this so hard? Um, and the thing that really like made it click was just taking a step back. So just like getting away from what's like causing the issue of like I can't focus. So if it's like working on outlines, okay, take a step back. Hey, if I need to try to like reorganize some things for scheduling, okay, take a step back, walk, because the biggest thing that I learned is even if you're not necessarily thinking about it, it's still in your head. So there's still some times where, and I mean, I've heard guests talk about it here too a ton, where like, again, like the second you fully relax, like it comes to you, like it'll click.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I've learned to accept that I kind of have a very sporadic work schedule. Um, and my job is like really flex work, so I can realistically do as long as my work gets done,
Mm-hmm.
I can do it. I I need to work on it because I've done some work at like 6 a.m. I'll like wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and like bust out like a deliverable, or I'll wake up at like 5 and like be like, okay, let me knock out something for creative block and go like right back, and then be like, okay, I'll send it later.
So do you not have to like you don't have like core hours that you have to stick to?
So there are core hours, but
Oh, okay.
like there are core hours like for meetings and stuff like that. But for the most
Right.
part, like as long as I give everyone a heads up, so I can be like, okay, hey, I'm flexing like doctor's appointment, hey, like,
Right, right. That's cool though.
so that's pretty cool. And I work from home, so I can just, and my manager knows. The only thing that happened was there was one outline that just wasn't going so well, and she was like, "This looks like a." She was like, "I don't know, Malik. This seemed like a 6:30 outline." And I was like, "That's not the one I did in 6:30." And she was like, "Oh, my bad."
So they know you're
Outline is so
Well,
funny.
me and my manager, are really, really close because I don't know, like she's like understands just the creative process and like being like, hey,
sure.
like
Mhm.
you are working on something, like you are a writer, and like writing's not neat, and like even time away is writing, and like she has like such a strong nuance of that she's just like, I'm not gonna like sit and force you, but she's an editor, so she's also like, I will go up and down this piece and just destroy it. And no ill malice, but she'll be like, I will make sure that this is like ironclad because the people who are paying us a lot of
Sure.
money. But she's also like, I'm not gonna like make you sit here and be like, hey, like I need this done in like from 9 to 5, and if you don't get it done between these times, like you're failing. She's like, as long as it gets done and as long as it's on time for the next thing, you're good.
Yeah.
And then also just personally, like I don't know, she's my manager's heard all the stories of like all the personal stuff that's happening, and not in like a bad way, but she's like, oh. So I'd be like, I'm fine, and she'd be like, Malik, please take breaks. Please go and
Mhm.
take time off. Like
Yeah, that's good.
she's like, I'm not gonna expect you to like work and be productive when like that is around you.
Aw,
Yeah.
that's really sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, no, I appreciate that a ton. And I think Clem could pop back in. We're good. But yeah.
Malik just told us a very juicy story about some artists that we cannot disclose.
Artists.
And
Yeah.
you'll never know what it is, everybody.
Ah,
Um, but yeah, no, I think that what you said about creative block is great. The having to walk away sometimes, like it's a recurring thing, but it's true, and I think it's hard to remember. I forget. I
Yeah.
sometimes
really
forget.
hard to believe in it. I think that's the hardest part for me. It's like I know this is something that I need to do, but it's really hard to get my body in
Mm.
motion, to get my ass off the chair, walk around, or like go, I don't know, outside of my apartment or whatever it is. I tend to be the kind of person who's like, no, I'm going to break this like I'm gonna solve the fucking puzzle, and then it's just like, you're not gonna solve it if you keep your butt on this chair. So
Yeah, because your head's
that's
like
what,
deadline, deadline, deadline. Like
yeah,
you're
Yeah.
all you're like in those headspaces. Like whenever I
yeah,
catch myself, I'm always like, it's always a situation of me being like, if I don't do this now, I'm never gonna get this done. Ah,
yeah, yes, yeah.
I
I
think we're
think
also conditioned to think that way.
it's also like, I was listening to some true crime podcast where they talk about when you're under a lot of pressure, like an intense amount of pressure all at once, your brain kind of gets stuck in what they call the goofy loop, where basically your brain just kind of goes in circles, and like it's really hard and sometimes almost impossible, depending on the amount of pressure, to like get out of it. I've noted, I haven't been in like life-threatening situations, but I have been under a lot of pressure suddenly where I was just, it's so hard to break out of that pattern. Yeah, it's just, it's just our brain.
that's why you have people to help you out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Malik, what kind of goals do you have for your future? I don't know what is this character that I'm doing.
I like
This is
I'm
my
like
podcast host character.
Like
um
dad, the paternal host.
What do you want to do with your life?
This is worse. This is like the ASMR, yeah. Like,
well, this is what I want to do.
We have Malik Gayle on the show today. This is my
Well-
NPR voice.
well,
We
hello.
have Malik, who's a producer on Creative Block.
Yeah, long time listener, long time fan, and it's been exciting to join this journey, and it's really been eye opening, and I'm glad to be on the show.
Wonderful.
Um, so I mean, okay, actually answering the question, okay, there's things. Okay, the whole interview have things caught in my throat. I've been trying to hold it back, so sorry, Clem. But I would say like I used to feel really bad about kind of being in the moment. Like I was always like, I want to focus kind of like on where I'm at now because I always used to be. I never really. I don't know the word. I never really was like. I never really knew what the future was gonna hold in like a bad way, but in the past, so I was just kind of like, whatever. But now I kind of look at it more optimistically of like I kind of want to be open to whatever opportunities are like cool things present.
Yeah.
Like if I was like really kind of set on a path, like I don't know if I would accept like creative block, Like I want to be open to like when the cool things can come and when things can arise. And I mean I want to start getting more into maybe other creative mediums. So I mean I've worked on writing songs before.
Mm.
I wrote a hook that I was pretty proud of. I mean, it's nothing too major. Like slowly getting back into like music, slowly getting back into drawing. My roommate's a visual artist, so and we actually spent like an hour or two before let's like breaking an idea for a comic.
Mm-hmm.
oh, very
So
cool.
so I think it's very much kind of being in the moment and like finding cool opportunities that align with my interests, but
Yeah.
taking them as they come one day at a time. Um, because I don't know, I'm very anxious. I feel like if I look too much in the future, I'm just gonna be like So
Yeah. I think that's wise. I think that, and I can relate to that. That's something that I struggle with. I think, like, and again, it's like a generational thing where we're always conditioned to think towards the future and worry about where we're gonna be, so much so that we forget to like just exist. And
Yeah.
I'm also trying to like be conscious of that.
that's
Because I
fair.
feel like I personally wasted a lot of time. I don't know if wasted is the right word, but I spent a lot of time focusing on goals that were beyond my control. And when those don't line up, that's crushing because you're like, but I've spent all this time on this thing. And it's like, well, no one cares. There's no rule that says just because you put the time in that it's going to work out or people are going to notice. They do notice, and sometimes things work out in other ways, but there's no guarantee. So
Exactly. And like I'd much rather be like, hey, let me spend the time with my friends, spend the time doing cool things, and
Yup.
yeah, I don't know. I was away from home for like a long time. I'm from New York City, but I didn't live here for a long time. So I mean, my whole mantra has just been like experience and do as much as possible. And sometimes that bites me in the ass when I come home at 2 a.m. But
But you're
it's
living life.
yeah, it hasn't steered me astray. You know, we're not gonna say that.
Uh-oh. Next time on Creative Block,
Listen,
Malik
I've
tells us about the time that he came home drunk.
I mean, I worked as a social media manager for a brewery. That was a lot at times. Like I worked.
Right.
So, and then being friends with bartenders in multiple bars. Okay, personal life gets crazy, but it's not my fault. I don't know. Like if like the running joke is like, I'll tell people things that happen. They're like, "You're the most like chill person. Why are these things happening to you?" And I'm like,
You're one of those. I have friends that are like that, where they're just like nice, down to earth people, and I think that attracts weirdos. It attracts like weird situations.
Yep.
Because I am prickly and closed off and avoid all conflict.
Yeah.
So like I don't get into those situations. I'm too like.
But my resting face is like smiley cheeks.
Yeah, you're nice, so
and
people talk to you.
But that's I don't know. It's weird because like if I'm like this, if I'm like this and I don't say anything, everyone seems like I'm like thinks I'm a hard ass. But the second I open my mouth, they're like, there's like an immediate like dissonance of just like what, like I don't know. But yeah, no, you're right. There's just something that happens where every single time I'm like, oh hey, like I'm just gonna kind of hang out. I'm just gonna kind of chill, and then something happens, and then I'm too nice to like nip it in the butt.
Yeah.
So it goes on for way longer than it needs to.
Yeah. That will happen if you're, because it's just, people can feel that in like with their gut, their intuition. They're like, I could probably get something out of this guy. He seems nice.
So that's where go with the flow bites me in the ass. I'm trying to be better at it, but go with the flow in positive situations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you pick up you keep an eye out for red flags anytime you're out and about.
But Gene, what if red's my favorite color?
What if pink is your favorite color?
But
this thumbnail is pink.
Yep.
And for those who are wondering, that is because pink is going to be the color of our music episodes. Music box, I should say.
Full circle.
Full circle, Malik. It's been great to have you on the team. It's been exciting to work with you on launching this new show. I'm very excited to see what interviews you do. We've banked a few. Well, you've done one. We did one together. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
we've got about 3, and I'm working on a 4th one right now.
Awesome. Yeah, it's going to be great. Everyone stay tuned. And that's the end of this creative block. Malik, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
And thanks to your listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor Clemens for editing the podcast, and Malik for helping us produce the show.
That's me.
If you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was B. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.